Yeah, and in fact, like the DOGE is just getting started. Let's not get angry just because, they haven't done it all in the first month, right? I mean, they've already, done and proposed to be done so much more, if you think about it, than has ever happened before. Also, thanks to Elon Musk and others, of course, the president, it's kind of cool to cut spending now, cool to even talk about cutting spending.
Keeping our republic is on the line, and it requires patriots with great passion, dedication, and eternal vigilance to preserve our freedoms. Jenny Beth Martin is the co-founder of Tea Party Patriots. She is an author, a filmmaker, and one of Time Magazine's most influential people in the world. But the title she is most proud of is mom to her boy-girl twins. She has been at the forefront, fighting to protect America's core principles for more than a decade. Welcome to the Jenny Beth Show.
Today, I'm joined by Paul Teller, who is the Executive Vice President of Advancing American Freedom and worked as a coalitions director for President Trump when he was in office.
Yeah, in legislative affairs and for the vice president as well. So yeah, good times.
So you are working very much on extending the Trump tax cuts in this term now, and also on spending cuts. If we don't extend these tax cuts, we're going to have the biggest tax increase in our lifetime, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of our biggest projects that we're working on, extending the TCJA, as they say it in Washington,
no
Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, right? Nobody knows what that is. But that's definitely our biggest project. We're putting money into advertising, into coalitions, into education on the Hill, all that kind of stuff. But you're right. If it doesn't get done, if they say, we'll let it slide, what's the big deal? Massive tax increases across the income spectrum. Because that's the thing that, of course, the left is out there in force about. They're saying it's just, would mean extending tax cuts for billionaires and, big corporations. Totally not true. I mean, perfect example, if the tax cuts expire, the 12% bracket goes up to 15%. So ask yourself, are just rich people paying the 12%? I'm pretty sure most Americans, watching us today, are going to pay that 12 at one of the lower brackets, and then the others go up as well. So huge tax increase coming if we don't stop it.
Okay, and it's going to happen in the reconciliation bill. And the reconciliation bill happens because a budget resolution has been passed in the House. And does that have to also pass the Senate?
Yeah, I mean, that's right. That's the thing. It's a little complicated, but basically, you need a budget resolution, House and Senate,
right,
to set up these expedited procedures. The fancy Washington word, as you said, is reconciliation. It helps it get through the Senate quicker. In other words, instead of needing 60 votes, you just need 51. And you're saying, well, who cares? Well, if you need 60 votes, then you need Democrats to pass anything you want to do related to taxing and, mandatory spending, the autopilot spending. For 51 votes under reconciliation, you just need Republicans. You could even lose 2 Republicans, which we might. In this environment, you never know if all Republicans stay together. And so that's super, super important to set that up. But yeah, it's one of those multi-step processes, a lot of complicated procedures. Certain things qualify to move in a reconciliation bill. Some things can't. Very, annoying Washington rules, but we'll be there to navigate it.
Yeah, but those Washington rules are very annoying. I completely
right?
agree, and they drive me insane.
Hard to understand.
But you've really helped me understand them over the years,
okay.
Even from when we're trying to stop Obamacare way back when.
Back in our glory days, right? Yeah.
So, what are you hoping will be in the reconciliation package, and why?
Well, it's a great point. I think. For now, we haven't taken a firm position as an organization as to whether it should be one big, beautiful bill, as President Trump said, or dividing it up into 2 bills. That's something that I think is being worked out, as we speak, throughout March and things like that.
And right now they're saying 1 bill, but we don't know what else is going to be in it, and if there's another one still to come.
Right. It started as 1 bill. It still could change. It could stay as 1 bill. And the only significance of that to just kind of Joe America is just kind of what gets passed first, what comes later. Because let's face it, we've seen this before in Washington. A lot of times when you put everything in one big bill, think immigration, it sometimes slows things down, right? Because everyone either likes this, doesn't like that, wants to add this, wants to take this out. So that could be the only problem with 1 bill. On the other hand, the opposite side of that coin is if you put a lot of things in one big bill, everyone has a piece that they really like and don't want to vote against. So maybe that's the thought of, if you're putting, for example, border security provisions in and American energy provisions, and some other national security, homeland security stuff, plus tax reform, geez, who's going to vote against that? I think that's the thought. So we haven't taken an official position, but it'll probably, I bet it winds up staying one bill. I think my money would be on that, at least for the time being. But yeah, we hope that it is a combination of extending the current tax law. So, Joe America gets to keep his or her exact same tax rates, but we're also hoping we go further and offer more tax relief to American businesses to, kind of spur job creation, individual provisions, maybe even on the individual side, so that people can keep more of their own money that they earn, make more of their own choices with more of their own resources. I know a lot of people
around the country really want no tax on tips.
Yeah, a lot of folks are pushing that. Obviously, the president will keep pushing that. I think, some Republicans are saying, not the greatest tax policy, but if that helps us get everything else extended, great, we'll take it, that kind of thing. And then just on the spending side, we're obviously pushing, like many Republicans, many conservatives, as much as can be cut out of the quote unquote mandatory side of the budget, which again is just a Washington word for the spending that's on autopilot. You almost think of it as, you sign up maybe for your cable bill to be automatically deducted from your bank account every month, or your electric bill. That's the Washington equivalent of mandatory spending. So in other words, you do nothing and the money still gets spent. That's where not only you can cut in this reconciliation procedure, but that's also the biggest drivers of our debt. Things like Medicaid or welfare, housing, other kind of mandatory spending things that we could get at. So we're pushing for as much as possible to be cut there. Trillions.
Well, and when I've learned in the last few days and weeks that Medicaid spending, which is not Medicare, so we're not talking about seniors.
Yeah.
We're talking about the program that is supposed to be for the people who are pregnant, who are children, or who are disabled.
Yeah.
That the spending in Medicaid has gone up 51% since 2019.
Amazing.
And they're able-bodied people who are receiving it right now. And that seems a little messed up. If they're able-bodied and they can't get health insurance from the Obamacare change, or maybe this is how Obamacare money is being doled out. I'm not quite sure I understand the ins and outs of this yet. I'm learning about it. But the point is, if they're able-bodied, they should be working.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be getting it just for free. And I don't think that it is fair to the people who the program was intended to benefit originally, pregnant, disabled, and children. I don't think it is fair for them to have to worry that they're not going to get their benefits somehow, when all these other able-bodied people are also getting that money. That's just not that's not right.
Yeah. In fact, I mean, this, but Obamacare put a lot of middle-class folks onto the Medicaid program, which it's just not great because, first of all, again, it wasn't designed for that. Many middle-class folks have better healthcare options. And that's the thing too. The more you study the Medicaid program, you realize some of the worst healthcare outcomes in America are in the Medicaid program. So we want to get people off that program to get them better healthcare options. And like you said, focus the program on the truly needy that it was, who it was intended for. And again, if we're going to get some control over our debt, yeah, it does mean some sacrifice. It means cutting really all throughout the budget. It almost seems like there'll be just about no account anywhere in the budget that will have zero cuts. We got to get some waste out of everywhere.
Yeah, and we're seeing with DOGE, there is waste in every little corner of the government. There is waste going on. And if we can address that, it would be, some people in Washington up until a few weeks ago were saying, oh, well, it really won't amount to very much. But I think it amounts to a lot more than anyone even realizes, because there has not been a proper audit of the federal government spending, as far as I know, ever.
Yeah. And in fact, like the DOGE is just getting started, right?
Yes.
Like, let's not get angry to get them for right?
Yeah.
And let's not get angry just because, they haven't done it all in the first month, right? I mean, they've already, done and proposed to be done so much more, if you think about it, than has ever happened before. Also, thanks to Elon Musk and others, of course, the president, it's kind of cool to cut spending now, cool to even talk about cutting spending. Whereas you remember many years where you bring it up and it's like, oh my God, even in Republican circles, we can't cut that, can't cut that, can't cut this. I remember the appropriations amendments back when we did appropriations amendments where Marsha Blackburn, Congressman John Campbell of California, and others would offer these across the board cutting amendments, but like 0.25% across the board, 0.5%, these tiny numbers, defeat. So the fact that now we're talking much bigger numbers in the hundreds of billions, in the trillions, is just incredible. And it's going to be hard. I'm not saying, you could snap your fingers and have it done. Some does have to be done through Congress, which makes it harder, narrow margins, the whole thing. But the fact that it's just cool to even talk about is new, is great, is exciting. And so that's why we're, just really on board with the DOGE and OMB, Russ Vought, all the folks that are working to just really trim back the federal government.
Yeah, I think it is quite amazing. I love watching what is happening with DOGE.
Yeah.
Now, in the rescissions package, it has to go through what is called the Byrd bath rule in the Senate.
Well, you know what? It's so for rescissions, it's again more weird, complicated
rules. Oh, I said rescissions. I meant
you meant reconciliation.
Reconciliation. Then we'll go to rescissions.
Right.
Sorry.
Okay. No
Sorry.
Problem. All good. Yeah. Right. Reconciliation. The Byrd bath again. Just all these fancy like weird Washington terms. It basically just means, is it allowed to be included in a reconciliation bill according to the rules that are set? It's weird. It's complicated. Again, it has to be from the mandatory side. It has to affect, the deficit, other rules and stuff like that. So you can't just throw everything into a reconciliation bill. Otherwise, if you could, everything would be in reconciliation. You'd never pass anything else anywhere else. So this is just, certain limited set of things. And the Byrd bath is that test. It's just the fancy phrase for testing whether the parliamentarian will say, yeah, that can go in there. That's allowed to go into this reconciliation bill. So, that's ongoing.
And these are really weird terms that most normal Americans are not familiar with.
And they shouldn't be because they're normal.
Yes, you are normal
human beings.
But be familiar with them because they're going to be coming up over the next few weeks as we work through trying to get this bill passed.
Yeah, exactly right. And so, and I think it'll take a while, meaning when your viewers are watching this, don't think like, hey, this will be done next week. No,
sadly.
This is going to be, I think, throughout the year. They'll try this and test that.
Yeah.
And maybe it passes one house, but not the other house. That kind of thing.
Hope that they've learned a few lessons along the way over the past few years. We'll see.
Yeah, I tell you, one great lesson so far is what happened a few weeks ago in House Budget Committee, where, they were trying to get a budget resolution done, which is just kind of the framework. It's not the actual reconciliation bill. It doesn't actually cut spending. It just sets the framework for how it gets done. And they were short some votes. And, in the past, when they're short votes, a lot of times congressional Republican leadership would go to moderates and say, okay, what do you need? We'll give you what you need. And conservatives can just suck it up. This was the opposite. They, of course, worked with moderates, but they mainly went to Chip Roy and other Freedom Caucus leaders and said, all right, guys, what do you want? And they got a lot of what they wanted and certain reassurances for the future and other things. And so the product got more conservative before passing and coming out of the House Budget Committee. So that's kind of a win right there for conservatives. And we'll praise Speaker Johnson for saying, I'm going to work with conservatives and make the product more conservative to get the votes, not less conservative. So good news there.
Very good news there. Okay, and then we've got something called rescissions that we're hoping to see happen. What is rescissions and why do we want this?
Right, no, exactly. Yeah, so that's, again, a special procedure where, if I'm not mistaken, I think the president has to actually initiate it. The executive branch sends a rescissions package, if you will, to the Hill to say, hey, this spending that you sent me and I signed the bill, like an appropriations bill, a spending bill, I want some of this gone. I want it rescinded. I want it to not be authorized to be spent, that kind of thing. It lists what the items are and that kind of thing. And so I think the plan is to have a rescissions package include many of the things the DOGE is proposing to cut, and maybe additional things that they cut between, this moment and whenever they do the rescissions package. So when your viewers hear the word rescissions, that's good. We like that. It means spending cuts. It means, moving. And if I'm not mistaken, it only needs 51 votes in the Senate again, easier to get through. You don't need Democrats, that kind of thing.
Well, and it's really important that that money is cut, right? Because then the next time when they are doing a budget, if they're doing a continuing or a spending bill, if they're doing a continuing resolution or they're trying to set baselines, they look at where it is. So if you've rescinded that money, the baseline is lower. Am I right?
100% right. And let's face it, it also shows that the DOGE can kind of keep its promises. In other words, it's not just something it's scribbling on a piece of paper. It's like, oh, no, we're going to actually not only say we're cutting it, but we're going to actually rip it out of, law, appropriations bill, that kind of thing, and say it's gone. We're keeping our promises and we're going further and doing more cuts. So it's exciting.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is it that you want to see people working on normal people working on to help with this process?
Exactly. Right. Because DC, different than normal.
Not even close.
I think great messages that folks could work on is if they're contacting their legislators or just other contacts in Washington, is basically just to say, don't increase anybody's taxes, right? Because the left is going to try to play different constituencies against each other. Oh, we'll raise business taxes, but not individual tax. How about we raise nobody's taxes at all in America? And in fact, can we go further? Can we actually maybe cut everyone's taxes? Another message that would be great within that bucket is that tax relief doesn't cost anything, because your viewers may have heard this. In Washington, it's very common, even amongst our friends on the right, sometimes to say, this tax cut costs $2 trillion or $3 trillion. It costs this, it costs that. And it's like, wait a minute. So if you're sitting at home saying, I can't afford eggs anymore or gas or anything else, but somehow Washington leaves more money in my pocket, which is a good thing, but that's a cost? How is that a cost? That means a pay raise for me, basically, as Joe America. So that would be another great message, is to say, hey guys, Mr. and Mrs. Washington, Mr. and Mrs. Member of Congress, tax cuts don't cost anything. They save me, regular citizen, money. So that's a great message. And then another great message is to just proceed as robustly and assertively as possible on spending cuts, right? We've had years, maybe decades of either spending increases, sometimes flatline spending, although that's rare, and occasionally on certain programs, marginal cuts, $1 million here, $2 million there. That
a cut in the increase.
A cut in the increase, exactly.
So they're still increasing, just not increasing as much.
Exactly. Or the cuts come in the later years, right? We're going to increase now, but don't worry, we're going to cut in year 5, 6, 7. And of course, it never happens. So the time is gone for that. It's, the debt is, I should say the interest on the debt is now the third biggest item in the federal budget. Medicare is first, Social Security second, interest on the debt is third. I mean, just amazing. So if we're going to get a handle on that, the cuts can't just be $1 million here, $2 million there. It's got to be tens of billions, hundreds of billions, trillions, especially over, 5 to 10 years, that kind of thing. So that would be another great message to call in with.
So going back to tax cuts not costing anything.
Yeah.
When they say, well, it's going to cost us something, that always frustrates me, because Washington acts like my money is their money.
Is theirs. And therefore, if I let you keep it.
Yeah. Like somehow they are doing
a favor. They're
doing you a favor by letting you keep the money that you actually exert energy and blood, sweat, and tears for.
Yeah.
Great point. It's my money.
Right.
It's my money.
You're taking it from me.
You're taking it from me. You don't get it automatically.
Yeah.
And so I understand that we need to also cut spending.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't think tax cuts are,
do both.
Do both.
Right? Like cut spending, cut taxes, no question.
Cut them both in an equal amount. That works for me.
That's
it's never happened.
Yeah.
So let's let it happen.
Or even cut more spending than the tax relief. Give some tax relief, but go even further on spending. Great. That's all good because it helps the debt. But don't hold tax relief hostage because, the Washington, propeller heads say that it costs $2 trillion, $4 trillion, whatever it is. And we couldn't quite get to that number of spending cuts, so there's not an offset. We just shouldn't be doing that, right? That's just not right.
And the reason it's not right is because the tax, it's hard for some people to understand this. And I don't think our friends on our side have the problem understanding this, but I think people on the left have a hard time understanding this. When you cut taxes and you leave more of the money in the economy, in the hands of individual citizens determining how they're going to spend the money, it helps grow the economy. They can invest it in their own business. If they're an Uber driver, maybe they upgrade their car and get a better car so they can get paid more money for their rides. If they have a business and they need to go buy more equipment, they can buy more equipment. Or maybe they are saving for their child's college or going on a vacation. But they get to determine that, and all of that helps create growth in the economy. So the government gets a smaller slice of a much bigger piece of pie, much bigger pie. So if the pie was only 12 inches and you're getting a tenth of it, you're getting kind of a small amount. If only they were getting just a tenth of it. If they're getting a quarter of it. But if you increase it and that pie is now 40 or 50 inches and you're getting an eighth of that, it's still way bigger than the 25% of a 12 inch pie.
Yeah, no question. Great and great analogy, right? Folks could understand pizzas, right? Most folks have looked at it and know what you're talking about. And it's just what's amazing about that too is you laid it up beautifully. It's up to each person, right? And each family and each business. Because for some it may be saving, like I'm saving for a rainy day for whatever else, college, retirement, whatever. Others it's like, like you said, I'm going to invest right back into my business. And having that predictability is great too, right? When you're talking about extending tax relief, it's not just like, here's a quick little infusion of cash back in your pocket for 5 minutes and good luck, have fun, go to the mall. It's knowing what rates are going to be in place, what deductions will be allowed, what caps will be allowed, what brackets, all the stuff that folks know when they're filing taxes, knowing what those will be for years allows for that economic growth, right? Because it gives the security to, let's say, a business owner to say, you know what, I can add that extra little wing onto my restaurant that I was planning on because I know that my tax rates will be X for the next 5 years. I can hire those 3 more people that I was hoping to hire because I know my tax rates, that kind of thing.
Right.
So yeah, that predictability is super important for growth. So you're right.
So no tax increases for anyone.
Yep.
Tax cuts don't cost anything.
Yeah.
And we need spending cuts.
Yeah.
It's pretty
and
simple
real
messaging.
Stuff too, right?
Yeah.
The real stuff. No gimmicks, right? Because that's another thing a few of us have been working on at Advancing American Freedom with some allies too, is Congress, unfortunately, and even Republicans do have a history of saying, we're cutting this amount. And then you dig into it and it's like, wait a minute, that's kind of fake. That's kind of fake. And what I mean by fake is maybe repealing spending that was never really going to happen in the first place, right? Like imagine if, one of your viewers, writes on a piece of paper, I'm going to buy a Ferrari, and then says, wait a minute, no, I'm not. Crumbles up the piece of paper, throws it in the garbage. I just saved whatever it is, $200,000. No, you didn't save $200,000. You weren't really going to do that anyway. You never really would have had the means to do it. You weren't serious. So sometimes Congress does that. It repeals things that are just hanging out there from years ago, but it wasn't ever going to be spent. So that's kind of fake. Or what we alluded to before, sometimes they'll say, well, we're not going to cut right now, but we'll start those spending cuts. I swear, I promise, 5 years from now, 8 years from now, whatever. It tends not to happen because a future Congress can just turn off those spending cuts and do other things. So those are examples of kind of things that are ways that Congress can fake it. So we're on the lookout for that. And, that's maybe another message your viewers can call in is no fake, no gimmicks, like real spending cuts that start soon. They can continue into the out years, but they've got to at least start soon. Start now, make it real, and don't just do fancy accounting gimmicks because sometimes Congress does that. Like they'll just move spending to a different kind of column in the ledger. Yeah. So it looks like, oh, look, this column just got less. Aren't we great? Well, but that spending's now over in this column over here.
Right.
That's not cool. So look out for those gimmicks.
And no Congress can bind a future Congress either. So
So they can come in and say,
they could say, we're going to cut in 10 years from now.
Right.
But in 5 more Congresses, that's long gone.
They just turn it off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've seen that. If your viewers were familiar with something called the Doc Fix from many years ago, without getting into the details, it was an example of some savings or cuts in Medicare that Congress promised it would do. And every time it got to the time to do it, they would say, oh, no, we can't do
Right.
that. Can't do that. And they would turn off the cuts and actually call it a fix. It was the doc fix. So it was even positively branded. We're fixing this law, which again, just meant we're spending more, which is a shame,
It's crazy.
you know? So
Well, Paul, how can people get involved to help with your efforts and to make sure that we extend the tax cuts and actually
absolutely.
get real spending?
Yeah, appreciate
Cuts.
Definitely, see us on our website, advancingamericanfreedom.com. A little bit long there, but it's all we could get, advancingamericanfreedom.com. Also, we're on Twitter, X, either at American Freedom or just me personally, at P Teller. So at PTELLER. We'd love to engage with everybody there and let's collaborate.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
This has been great. Really appreciate the opportunity. Good to see you.
The Jenny Beth Show is hosted by Jenny Beth Martin, produced by Kevin Mooneyhan, and directed by Luke Livingston. The Jenny Beth Show is a production of Tea Party Patriots Action. For more information, visit teapartypatriots.org.
If you like this episode, let me know by hitting the like button or leaving a comment or a 5-star review. And if you want to be the first to know every time we drop a new episode, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for whichever platform you're listening on. If you do these simple things, it will help the podcast grow, and I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much.